On dark, stormy nights, when the rain whispers secrets, true terrors come alive. The line between reality and nightmare blurs, and the shadows themselves seem to writhe with unseen horrors. Tonight, we delve into 3 chilling tales of terror that unfolded on nights just like this. Nights when the rain was a harbinger of fear, and the darkness held its breath, waiting for the screams. These are true stories, whispered from soul to soul, stories that linger long after the storm has passed. It was a night just like this, the rain an unrelenting torrent against the windshield, creating a symphony of chaos and isolation. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She was late, a detour stretching her nerves thin, each minute feeling like an eternity. The highway stretched before her, a seemingly endless ribbon of black glass, reflecting the sparse lights that dotted the horizon. Each passing mile marker seemed to tick by with agonizing slowness, a cruel reminder of how far she still had to go. She'd been driving for what felt like hours when she saw it in the distance, a lone figure standing by the side of the road, drenched and forlorn. As she got closer, she could make out the outline of a man, tall and slender, his clothes clinging to him in the downpour. He was gesturing frantically, waving his arms in a desperate plea for help, his movements erratic and urgent. Sarah hesitated, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, fear and compassion battling within her. Her better judgment told her to keep driving, to not get involved in something potentially dangerous. But another part of her, the part that couldn't ignore a cry for help, urged her to stop. Taking a deep breath, Sarah slowly pulled over to the side of the road, her heart racing. He approached cautiously, his hands raised in a gesture of peace, his eyes wide with hope and fear. His face, now illuminated by the dim interior light of her car, was etched with a mixture of relief and desperation, his breath visible in the cold night air. "Thank God," he rasped. "My car. Accident. Down the road. Need help." His voice trembling with urgency. Sarah wanted to help, but there was something about the man's demeanor that sent a shiver down her spine, a primal warning. I have a cell phone," she stammered. "I can call the police." Her voice barely above a whisper. The man's smile faltered. "No police," he hissed. "Please, just need a ride." His eyes darting nervously. Sarah's hand trembled as she clutched her phone. I don't think that's a good idea," she whispered, her instincts screaming at her to leave. The man's demeanor shifted, the desperation on his face replaced by a chilling calmness, his eyes narrowing. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I need to get out of here. They're coming." His voice filled with a strange urgency. Fear gripped Sarah's heart. She fumbled for the lock on her door, her breath quickening. The man's hand shot out, his fingers wrapping around her wrist in a vice-like grip, his touch cold and unyielding. "I told you," he hissed. "They're coming, and they don't like to be kept waiting." His voice a low growl. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah slammed her hand down on the horn, the sound piercing the night. The man recoiled, his grip loosening for a split second, enough for her to act. Yanking her hand free, she threw the car into gear and floored the accelerator, her tires screeching on the wet pavement. She didn't dare look back, her heart pounding as she sped away, the rain blurring her vision. The rain seemed to intensify, as if the storm itself was in league with the terror she had just escaped, each drop a reminder of the night's harrowing encounter. As the rain intensified, so did the fear, the storm's fury echoing the growing dread in their hearts. The old mansion stood on the outskirts of town, a brooding silhouette against the storm-tossed sky, its dark windows like eyes watching the chaos. Locals whispered tales of its tragic past, of a family torn apart by grief and madness, their spirits said to still haunt the halls. But for 4 friends, the mansion represented a challenge, a chance to prove their bravery and confront the unknown. Mark, the self-proclaimed leader, stood at the foot of the crumbling porch steps, his resolve unwavering despite the ominous setting. Beside him stood Emily, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of excitement and trepidation, her curiosity battling her fear. David, the quiet one, shifted nervously from foot to foot, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap out at any moment. And then there was Jessica, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of fear and fascination, her camera clutched tightly in her hand, ready to capture any supernatural evidence. The front door creaked open as if beckoning them inside, the sound sending shivers down their spines. The air inside was thick with the smell of dampness and decay, a testament to the years of neglect and abandonment. As they ventured deeper into the house, the storm raged outside, the wind howling through the broken windows. They explored each room cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls, the silence almost deafening. The mansion seemed to hold its breath, watching them, its secrets hidden in the shadows. In the parlor, they found a dusty old piano, its keys yellowed with age. Jessica ran her fingers lightly over the ivory, a discordant melody filling the air, the notes echoing eerily. In the dining room, they discovered a long, decaying table set for a feast that never happened, the plates and cutlery covered in dust. As they climbed the grand staircase, the air grew noticeably colder, each step creaking under their weight. On the landing, they found a portrait of a woman, her eyes seeming to follow their every move, a silent observer of their intrusion. They reached the master bedroom, its once grand furnishings now faded and rotting, a ghost of its former glory. Emily gasped, pointing to a corner of the room where a rocking chair swayed gently back and forth, as if moved by an unseen hand. Suddenly, the storm outside reached its crescendo, a deafening clap of thunder shaking the house to its very foundations. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness, the silence broken only by their panicked breaths. Screams filled the air, each of them scrambling blindly in the darkness, their fear palpable. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the storm abated, the lights flickering back on, casting eerie shadows on the walls. But something was different. In their haste, they had knocked over a small table, revealing a photograph that hadn't been there before. It was a picture of them, standing in the master bedroom with a shadowy figure behind them, its eyes glowing with an eerie light, a chilling reminder of the mansion's haunted past. The storm wasn't the only thing that was restless that night. The air itself seemed charged with an unsettling energy. The small cabin nestled deep in the woods had always been a sanctuary for Liam, a place where he could escape the chaos of the world. But tonight, the familiar comfort of crackling fire and the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof offered little solace. The usual warmth felt distant, almost foreign. He was alone, more alone than he'd ever felt before. The isolation was palpable, pressing in on him from all sides. He tried to distract himself with a book, but the words swam before his eyes, refusing to form coherent sentences. The wind howled through the trees, their branches scraping against the roof like skeletal fingers. Every creak of the old cabin, every rustle of leaves outside the windows, sent a jolt of anxiety through him. The sound seemed amplified, more menacing. He told himself it was just the storm, but deep down, a primal fear gnawed at his insides, whispering that something was terribly wrong. He decided to make himself some tea, hoping the familiar ritual would calm his nerves and bring some semblance of normalcy. As he filled the kettle, he noticed it. A faint scratching sound coming from the front door, barely audible over the storm. He froze, his hand hovering over the kettle, his breath caught in his throat. The scratching came again, more insistent this time, as if something was trying to get in. His heart pounded, his mind racing with possibilities. each more terrifying than the last. He was miles from anyone, the nearest neighbor a good hour's drive away, making the situation even more unnerving. Who would be out on a night like this? Cautiously, he set the kettle down and tiptoed towards the door, his footsteps barely making a sound. He peered through the peephole, but all he could see was darkness, an impenetrable void. "Hello!" he called out, his voice wavering. Silence. The kind of silence that felt heavy, almost oppressive. Only the sound of the wind and the rain answered him, their relentless noise a stark contrast to the stillness inside. He took a deep breath, telling himself he was being foolish, that his mind was playing tricks on him. It was probably just a branch scraping against the door, or maybe an animal seeking shelter from the storm. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease, the sense that something was watching him. He went back to the kitchen, his hand trembling as he lit the gas burner under the kettle, the flame flickering in the dim light. As the water heated, he busied himself with finding a mug, his back to the living room, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on his neck. And that's when he heard it. A whisper, soft and low, coming from the darkness behind him, almost like a breath against his ear. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. There was nothing there, just the empty room. He told himself it was his imagination, a trick of the wind, but the doubt lingered. But the whisper had been so clear, so close, that he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone, that something unseen was with him in the cabin. The rain continues to fall, washing away the day's anxieties and fears, but some stories linger, etched in the silence of the night. As you drift off to sleep tonight, may the rhythm of the rain lull you into a peaceful slumber. But remember, not all stories end with the sunrise. Some secrets are best left untold, buried beneath the weight of the darkness, hidden in the whispers of the rain. Sleep tight, and remember, the rain often tells stories best left untold.